Hey, welcome to Wager Talk, everybody. Scott Spreitzer here with Matthew Holt, VP of Business Development over at CG Technology Sportsbooks in Las Vegas. UFC 205 is finally here. We've been waiting what seems like forever for this card to take place. It's Saturday night. It's at Madison Square Garden in New York. It should be here, but it's there. We'll put up with that part anyway. Alvarez, McGregor, and so much more. What a loaded card. It presents a world title triple header on this card, Matt, and that's what has everybody salivating, not just this Alvarez-McGregor match. That doesn't even tell the entire story, talking about the main event. There's a co-main event. The main event doesn't really tell the entire story, but I don't want to bury the lead, so we're going to start with Alvarez-McGregor. Because of this loaded card from top to bottom, is the betting action right now at CGT Books bigger than you've ever seen for any UFC card previous to this one?
So normally our expectations for this card was that it would probably finish like in the third or fourth ever highest MMA, because it's right smack in the middle of college football season and in the middle of NFL season, college basketball starting Friday. But surprisingly, we're already 6 figures deep on the main event alone in terms of handle. So it looks like we may actually do our biggest numbers ever on an MMA card right smack in the middle of football, NBA, college football season, which is normally something that's unheard of. Normally that big July card, which, you know, this year was August with Conor McGregor, Diaz 2, which broke all the records. We thought there's no way we'll touch that. Even though this is a better card, that one had better timing in terms of all the sporting events around it. But if the early numbers are any indicator, we could easily do over $2 million a handle on this card alone.
Wow. I was going to say, when you guys opened it up at CGT, McGregor was about a $1.45 favorite midweek. He was about a $1.60 favorite. What kind of percentages are you taking on these two fighters right now?
So interestingly enough, all the early sharp action was on Eddie Alvarez. And this was a number where we said, we never moved the number down. We said, oh, let's wait. Fight week, the Conor money will show up. And of course, that's been the case here. Not quite that same barrage of Conor money that you see when the fight's here in town and everyone's here betting it. But the Conor money has certainly showed up. And we went from a 5-figure liability yesterday morning on Alvarez to a 5-figure liability on McGregor before lunch was even over. So. And the Conor money just keeps flowing in. And every time the price creeps up, we see that sharp buyback on Eddie Alvarez. And one of the things that's always made Conor McGregor, his fight so popular with the fans and the bettors, is unlike the Floyd Mayweather fights where you have to lay 1-10 or 1-15. There hasn't been a Conor McGregor fight in the UFC for a title that's been over -200 yet. And I think that's the appeal too to fans, that he's in ultra competitive fights every time where he's a 2-1 or less favorite.
Let's talk about the actual fight itself, get into the actual goods in the octagon. You've got right now a situation where McGregor is going to fight this fight at 155. He spent most of his time at featherweight. He's moving up to this weight class. He did fight Nate Diaz at 170. Doesn't it seem like 155 is more his natural weight? His detractors for this fight keep bringing it up, to me at least, that he's fighting at a weight that he's not used to, but I think this is his natural weight.
Absolutely. There's no way he can make 145 anymore. Look, he hasn't been able to make 145 anyway. The plan was always to come up ever since the UFC instituted the IV ban, which has hurt a lot of those guys that used to massively dehydrate, go on an IV, and gain 20 to 25 pounds. Conor McGregor's days as a 145-pound champion are done. This is his natural weight class right now. You're right. And despite the fact that Eddie Alvarez has always been a lightweight and Conor McGregor is a featherweight, you're going to see Saturday night Conor McGregor is taller, bigger, stronger. He's going to look like the bigger fighter in the octagon on Saturday. Conor McGregor 7-0 with 6 KOs, fighting at 155 pounds or less in the UFC. There's a lot of advantages to Conor in this fight. The one disadvantage is his wrestling. And Eddie Alvarez has proven in the UFC with wins over Anthony Pettis and Gilbert Melendez that his wrestling chops are as good as anyone's. If this is an exciting all-out brawl, you have to love Conor. But if Alvarez says, I just want to win the fight, and puts McGregor on the ground and holds him there, it may not be what the fans want, and it could be boring, but that's kind of Eddie Alvarez's path to victory. I think they both have clear paths to victory here. Conor needs to keep it standing and land that big left hook, and Eddie Alvarez probably wants to get it to the ground and pound him.
Yeah, Eddie Alvarez, I mean, when I watch his fights, or you go on YouTube, you watch his old fights, I mean, what he loves to do is to push guys up against the cage and then take them down from there. McGregor's actually better at defending that. He doesn't do it so well in the middle of the octagon. In the middle of the canvas, he's not as good at that. So let's make it official, so to speak. Which guy do you think has his way in this particular fight with his style, and which one leaves the octagon victorious?
I actually like Eddie Alvarez in this fight. It may be because I'm one of those old diehard MMA guys, and Eddie Alvarez is a cult favorite of the MMA guys way back from his Bellator lightweight title, rumbles that he had with Michael Chandler. And he came over here, his only loss in the UFC to Donald Cowboy Cerrone, who's a huge lightweight, gave him all kinds of fits. I think Eddie Alvarez is going to ground Conor McGregor early. That's going to frustrate McGregor. And then what Alvarez is really good at after he takes people down is landing big shots. He knocked out the former champion Rafael dos Anjos. When he throws punches, he has massive power. I think, look, he gets frustrated early. Conor starts getting frustrated being on the ground. When they get up, they start to rumble. I think Eddie Alvarez catches him in the third and wins by knockout.
That's pretty good. I like that prediction. Let's take a minute here to talk about the two other title fights. First up, you got the welterweight title match. Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, about a $1.90 favorite at CGT midweek over Tyron Woodley, up from $1.65. What's the betting action on that one, Matt? And which one of these fighters leaves the octagon victorious?
This is going to be the biggest pros versus Joes fight on the card here, because a lot of the sharps are taking the plus money with Tyron Woodley. We have five-figure liability to Tyron Woodley right now, as the sharp money always comes in earlier than the public money for the weekend. And the public bets are all been on Stephen Wonderboy Thompson thus far. And if you look at Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, he's Lyoto Machida. And for a period of time, Lyoto Machida was unstoppable in the UFC. That karate style of you can't hit me, I move too much, and then I'm very precise and land strikes when you come in works. The problem is Tyron Woodley is a beast. He is a big, strong wrestling guy. They both have one common opponent in the last few fights. Rory McDonald, who Wonderboy Thompson was able to dominate. Rory was able to outmaneuver Tyron Woodley. I think there's a lot of value here in Tyron Woodley. Rarely do we see the champion who's coming off a knockout win be almost a 2-to-1 underdog. Tyron Woodley's always been at this class. He's a huge welterweight. I think he has a lot of different ways to win. He could probably win this fight by submission. He could ground and pound him and just win a decision. And he has knockout power, as we saw by the first round knockout win over Robbie Lawler in his last fight. But on the other side of it, you have a favorite who's a 2-to-1 favorite who has one clear path to victory. He has to stay away. He has to use that karate style and knock Tyron Woodley out. I like the more diverse skill set of Tyron Woodley, the champion here, getting $1.60, $1.70.
When I watch Wonderboy, the one thing he does is cover a ton of canvas. He uses every single inch of the octagon. But he did get smothered by Matt Brown, as we saw, and I think Woodley has the ability to do that. The other thing, and I'll wrap up this fight analysis on this one, and I'm not the first one to say that, the one thing that Tyron Woodley has is that low kick that usually catches guys in the back of the thigh, and it's devastating. And because Wonderboy Thompson stands sideways rather than squarely at a fighter, his lead leg is susceptible to that low kick, and it might be a kick like a mule. It's probably the hardest low kick in all of the UFC, at least that I've seen. So I'm with you there. I think Woodley has great value and can pull the upset of this one. Final title fight, we'll take just a couple of seconds here, are the female fighters in the championship, and it's Joanna Jedrzejczyk against Karolina Kowalkiewicz. And thank God I said those right. I had to call our good friend Johnny Detroit. But anyway, these two ladies from Poland are going to duke it out. Joanna's open minus 270. She's now a 4-to-1 favorite.
And even worse than that, minus 450. And a lot of people always assume that a sharp bettor is, hey, I'm betting the underdog, and that's the sharp play. But what we've seen in the history of boxing and UFC is a lot of times the public won't lay that minus 400. And a sharp guy will. He'll say, look, I think this should be minus 700. It's only minus 400. I'm happy to lay 2,000 to win 500. And that ends up being the sharper side. And we have seen some sharp money already come in laying the big price, laid 350, laid 380, laid $4, laid 4 1/4, all the way up to 450 now on the favorite here. Joanna Jedrzejczyk, and that's how you say it, Joanna Jedrzejczyk, is the best female fighter in the MMA right now. 12-0, just maybe the best striker I've ever seen. Her striking is unbelievable. I think the national audience got to see her. The last opportunity is they did that fight weekend leading up to 200. She headlined a card during that week. So a lot of people that hadn't got to see her before finally got to see her there. She's truly amazing. She's fighting a fighter who not a lot of people know of. They were grooming Rose Namajunas to be the next contender, and of course Karolina beat her. She's 10-0 as well, but we just haven't seen enough of her to know whether she's going to be able to handle that blitz striking of Joanna Jedrzejczyk. And so far the sharp bettors are saying we'll take the champion and lay the wood.
Good stuff from Matt Holt. And I want to remind everybody, by the way, that you can tune into SB Nation Radio Wager Talk, 8 p.m. Eastern Time every Thursday. But this particular Thursday, we have John Anik joining us to break down even more UFC 205. John Anik, of course, employed by UFC, and you can check him out on Fox Sports 1. He just was with the card in Mexico City this past week, and he'll be on with us around 8:15 Eastern Time. SB Nation Radio, Wager Talk is the name of the show this Thursday night. Great offers at WagerTalk.com right now. You can get a $50 sign-up bonus after your first purchase of $12 or more right now at WagerTalk.com. We've got more coming from Matt. College basketball futures that tips off this Friday. Check that video out in just a bit. We are Wager Talk TV. Stick around for more.